What's going on, everybody? Jared Sandler here, welcoming you in to the Just a Sec conversation. For those back for some more, hey, appreciate the loyalty. For those who are here for the first time, thanks for giving this a chance. This is episode 54 with a fixture in the DFW sports scene. He's also well-traveled, and we get into that in the conversation. NBC's Newy Scruggs. If you're a sports fan in DFW, chances are you have consumed Newy's work. He's done TV, he's done radio, he's done a lot of different stuff, and he's got a really interesting backstory, and I'm excited to share that with you, and I appreciate Newy sharing that with you here through this conversation. Just a reminder, I would certainly appreciate if you'd consider subscribing, liking, commenting, or just sharing the link. All that stuff goes a long way, and it really would mean a lot. But here we go, episode 54, the Just a Sec conversation with NBC's Newy Scruggs. All right, Newy, do I have this right? You were born in Germany?
Yes.
Okay.
My dad's in the Army.
Yeah, so what was it like born in Germany and just being in an Army family, being an Army kid? What were those experiences like for you?
Don't remember anything about Germany. I came to America when I was still a baby, so I don't remember it. He was actually stationed to go back, and he didn't tell me that I could have gone because it was my senior year. So he wanted me to finish. He thought I wanted to finish my senior year in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is where Fort Bragg is. And had he told me I could have gone, I'd have jumped up and went on over and went back to Germany and hung out for my senior year, like a couple other friends of mine did. But he didn't tell me till too late.
And where all did you live growing up? Once you relocated to America, were you kind of put in one place, or did you still bounce around a bit?
Yeah, no, you bounce around because that's what the Army does. They constantly give you orders. So I left Germany. We went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. From Fort Bragg, North Carolina, then we went to Fort Hood, Texas, where Killeen is. Then from Killeen, we ended up moving to Savannah, Georgia, and he was stationed at Hunter Army Airfield because he was in the Rangers. And then we ended up going back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, because he was in the 82nd Airborne. So we ended up going back there, and that was just kind of where I finished out junior high and high school over there.
So I know there are a lot of challenges with moving around and maybe, maintaining a friend group and whatnot, but what were some of the positives that you took out of those experiences and getting to see different parts of the country?
Look, man, the whole friend thing was no biggie because you made friends. Living on a military post is just different. And when you're on base, when you're on post, man, you just make friends, and they're constantly moving. So you don't know anything different in your life. You just know, okay, we're getting ready to go. Okay, where are we at? Where do we live? And you just find friends and your other friends because they move around. So you're this kind of group together. So you're always cool with it. It wasn't until later on when you become a civilian that you realize this trauma of people moving. Oh, my gosh. If anything, what worked so well for me getting into being a sportscaster was moving around was never an issue for me. I got it. I was at different places. We just knew, hey, you pick up, you make new friends, you adapt. And so that's in its own way what my father, the life he provided me as a kid, really helped me as an adult. If anything, the problem for me was after about 4 years, I was always itching to leave someplace anyway.
So you mentioned sports and broadcasting. I guess, first of all, separate from the broadcasting side, what drew you to sports? Who were the people that helped introduce you to sports, and what was it about sports in general, or maybe a specific sport that turned this into just something that you do as an activity into, I imagine, what's become a passion for you?
It was just what we did growing up. You're on a military base. You get enrolled in sports. You play sports. You go outside. That's what you do all day. Today we're playing baseball all day. We're playing basketball. We're playing kickball. I mean, that was our whole life, was just sports. And when you're a part of a military family, everything was free. You signed up. We went. We tried different things. Tried tennis. You just tried everything, and it was all free. And you got on your bike and you went to practice, or you went up to the gym. And so that was just our whole lives were just, at least for me, it was really just revolved around sports. And so I just wanted to keep it going.
And then the broadcasting side, when did that become a thing for you? When did that, at first even, when did you know it was a possibility, and when did it go from being a possibility to something you wanted to pursue?
Fifth grade in Savannah, Georgia. Larry McDuffie was my teacher. We had to do a mock newscast for the class and read the paper and just, come up with something. And I just did the sports, and that was what I wanted to do. So my fifth grade teacher was also a radio host. He had a gospel show. He also was the lead choir director at our church. So he had me on one day, and I just thought it was the greatest, coolest thing. And then doing the mock newscast, and I just said, all right, I'm going to try and play baseball for a living. I'm going to do the Jackie Robinson thing, play for the Dodgers. But if it doesn't work out, I'll at least talk about it and get into the games.
And then you go to UNC-Pembroke. What were your goals when you stepped foot on campus, and how did your time there help you grow and help you maybe experience things that were influential moving forward?
Yeah, great question. So all throughout, so from the fifth grade on, this is what I wanted to do. And I was one of the people that constantly read about it. What do I need to do? Who can I get around and figure it all out? So I ended up at a student council meeting going to Terry Sanford High School, where the rapper J. Cole ended up going many, many years after I had left Fayetteville. Tom Suter, who was the main sports anchor, WRAL-TV, Tom was there. I met Tom. I said, I want to be you. And so Tom and I stayed in contact. And I originally wanted to go to North Carolina because I'm always a Carolina fan, big Jordan guy, and wanted to go to Carolina. And Tommy told me, he said, look, when you come up to Carolina, you don't really touch the equipment. He said, you need to go somewhere where you can actually, touch the equipment and get experience. He said, by the time you get into Carolina, it's too late. So, and it's just amazing how things line up. I was the captain of my debate team, and one of the assistant coaches at a different high school, her husband ran the TV program at Pembroke. So she told me about it, and then lo and behold, the next week in the Fayetteville Observer, they had a front cover story about the whole program. Now, UNC-Pembroke was not a school I was interested in going to. At the time, all I knew was that it was a Native American school, historically Native American school, which called it, back then we said it's the Indian school. And it's like, nah, I'm not going down there. So I ended up getting reading the paper and said, man, I got to look into this program. Told Tommy about it, and Tom was like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Get the experience. Went down there, and I just said, man, that's where I've got to go. So ended up going there, got a scholarship at the university, and by the time I was done, 1 month into my senior year, I had so much experience that I got the weekend sports anchor job at WBTW-TV in Florence, South Carolina. Immediately became the richest dude on campus, making $300 a week.
300, huh?
Yeah, 300. Got a raise at 325 after 6 months. They didn't kick it in, and I went straight to the HR office. You all owe me $50.
Did that debate background help you get that raise? The
No,
negotiating?
No. I mean, they got over so much when they offered it to me. I mean, think about how can you negotiate when you are in college and you have zero experience? There's no negotiation. You're taking what they give you. I was able to negotiate a $50 raise, and I got a clothing allowance. So there you go.
There you go. It's funny you bring that up, though, because and I think I had an interest in broadcasting later than you did. It certainly not in fifth grade. And I had heard, hey, Syracuse, Northwestern, Missouri, these are the schools you want to go to. And, I think especially for sports broadcasters, Syracuse, as you know, takes up a ton of real estate as far as, the production of people in our industry. And I didn't get in. I got into Syracuse. I didn't get into Newhouse, which is the journalism school. And at that time, I thought, well, if I can't get into Newhouse, maybe I'm just not good enough. And, meanwhile, all my friends were getting into their first choices, and I didn't get into Northwestern or Newhouse. And I'm sure that, I'd like to believe with my work ethic and passion for this, had I gone to Syracuse, I'd still be broadcasting to this day. But I ended up at USC, and they didn't have nearly as many kids interested. As a matter of fact, I was broadcasting a football game, a USC football game, before my first week of classes even started. And I think back to that experience and how influential it was, and I have so many takeaways from this, but it's interesting hearing that you had, whether it was similar advice and perhaps a similar experience, because we are surrounded by so many people that come from these powerhouses, and USC's got a great journalism program, but they produce more news anchors than they do play-by-play guys, which is obviously the path that I've pursued. And I don't know, it's just really cool hearing you share that about UNC-Pembroke, because I didn't realize that was a part of the decision.
Yeah, Syracuse looked into that. I mean, I searched all kinds of schools, looked at everything, and Syracuse was a place I thought about because, obviously Bob Costas and Mike Tirico. So I looked at it, but the biggest thing was the cost. And for me, I just didn't want to put that burden on my parents. I felt that it was up to me to make sure that I played a contributing part in it. So when you went out to USC, Jared, what year was that?
2007, fall of 2007.
Okay, because I worked out in L.A. starting in 96, and to me, when I just think about just those choices you made, there's so much in Los Angeles. There's so much there that's a better spot than being in Syracuse, where you just have the school. In L.A. you have so much, and you have just so many opportunities, and that's I can't say enough how much I just enjoy that city. And I tell people all the time, the opportunities in that city are really boundless. But that's pretty cool that you really got to do an SC game there. And they're at least good when you went there, because when I first got there, they weren't real good. And this is way before Pete Carroll had got there. This is when they had John Robinson the second time around, his last days, and then they went into Paul Hackett. And after Hackett, they ended up hiring Pete. But I had hit the Texas by the time Pete got really rolling.
It's funny, and you'll appreciate this, and we've had plenty of USC and even UNC conversations, because I think we still share a disdain for Duke. But my first week on campus, so I grew up in Dallas, and I didn't really have an allegiance to UT or OU or A&M or SMU because my family's from South Africa. So my dad went to Witwatersrand, and Witwatersrand, last I checked, is not competing in the Big 12 or any NCAA conference. So I didn't have that allegiance, but I had these UT shorts. And I don't know, I just threw them on. It was, my first week on campus, and I'm walking around, and I'm getting these death stares. And I'm like, I don't know, did I not do my hair? Like, what's going on? And someone came up to me and was like, don't ever wear those shorts again, because it was a year and a half after the Rose Bowl. And I didn't even think about that, and you bring when you brought up the good years of USC, I just barely missed the Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart era. I got a little John David Booty, some Mark Sanchez, some Matt Barkley, and they were competitive teams, but I can't imagine what it was like knowing what I know about that city and what you know about that city had I been there for that Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart era, because, that place that place was more packed with celebrities when those two were there than, the Hollywood area. It was insane.
It was a showtime. It was showtime of college football. That's what it was, and it was the place to be. And Pete, how smart was he to capitalize on everything there? It was the place to be, especially on a Saturday, filling up over 90,000 at the Coliseum. But yeah, that's bad timing on your part.
Yeah, just missed it.
It's kind of like you can't. And it was interesting. These certain places you can't wear certain stuff. You can't wear anything Duke in Kentucky because people are not over Christian Laettner hitting that shot. So yeah, you wearing that after Vince Young ended up running in the end zone for that final touchdown, which kept them from 3 straight national championships. Yeah, not good, bro. Not good.
And I was rooting for Texas that night because, first of all, I hadn't even thought of. I think I was a junior in high school. I hadn't even given any thought to USC. And two of my friends from growing up, the Acho brothers, I know them as Sammy and Manny. I think now Manny goes by Emmanuel, and Sam, who's still in the NFL, goes by Sam. But Sam had committed to Texas, and so I was like, I don't really have a dog in the fight, but I got a buddy who's going to Texas, so I may as well root for Texas. So it still pains me that USC lost that. But I never experienced the type of pain I'd have experienced had I been a student or an alum at that time. So I guess I definitely missed out. It would have been really cool to be a part of some really good USC teams. Instead, I got the disappointment of USC football that's existed pretty much since I was a freshman there. There's been major disappointment with that program. We got to get that program turned around, Newy. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, the biggest thing is Clay Helton's got to go. And
oh my gosh!
Me, the other thing that they have to do is understand. Stop trying to chase people that had a connection with Pete. Alabama went through this. So my entire family's from Birmingham, Alabama. So we grew up around Alabama football, rooting for Alabama football, and they kept constantly trying to find people who were connected with Bear Bryant. And what's the greatest success they've had since? It's been with Nick Saban, who had no ties to Alabama. Now, Gene Stallings did. Gene had it with Bear Bryant at Texas A&M, but they had to get past this. It's got to be in the family thing. And to me, if USC is going to win again, it's got to be with someone who doesn't have these Pete Carroll ties, but can coach and win. And also, Jared, and from living out there, it's hard to get assistance because guys have a cost of living, making a certain amount of money at USC, yes, they're going to pay you well, but the cost of living and having a family in Los Angeles and the drive to work, it can be a challenge. So that definitely weighs into it. And even over at UCLA, imagine you trying to, hey, I want to live near campus at UCLA. You can't do it. And over at USC, do you want to live near campus? Your wife probably doesn't want to live near campus. It's a 5-minute drive from campus. So these are challenges that these guys face. But imagine if SC and Pat Hayden would have just given a job to Eddie Ogeron. Imagine that.
I don't even want to get into the athletic directors that have run USC for the last however many years. We can do a week's worth of sportscasts talking about all the mistakes that have gone down just with the football program. Doesn't even consider all the other sports at USC. It's unbelievable. I digress before I punch a hole in the computer. So you mentioned earlier through your Army experience, bouncing around helped you adjust as a broadcaster when, inevitably you're going to do much of the same. I'm curious, when I went to Michigan and I had to do sports talk in Michigan, what was not a challenge for me, Newy, was becoming familiar with the present state of the Pistons, the Lions, the Red Wings, the Tigers. That was easy. What was really tough for me was understanding what it meant to be a Michigander, what it meant to be a Detroit sports fan, the history, the pains, the sources of pride, the things that maybe aren't advertised on billboards or on the cover of media guides, all those nuances. I'm curious, was that ever a challenge for you, especially as you settled in a major market like Dallas? And how did you go about learning what it meant to be a part of that community and essentially doing what you've done so well, and that's becoming a fabric of the community, even though this is not where your roots necessarily were laid?
So what city in Michigan?
So I was in Midland, but my work took me probably equal parts Ann Arbor, Detroit, East Lansing, Saginaw. I was all over the place.
I had a job offer in Battle Creek. It was near Battle Creek. It wasn't Grand Rapids. That was it. Okay, so it was Wood TV. It was a job that I didn't take in Grand Rapids at Wood TV. I didn't get it, and the person who got it next was Matt Weiner, who went to ESPN now for NBA TV. Matt ended up getting the job that I turned down. But to answer your question, I'm a history fanatic. I love history. And I also enjoy reading. So for me, getting to areas and learning about them, a lot of it it's already out there. There have been books that have been written. Back in the old days, you can go to microfiche. Go to the microfiche library. You could learn what's going on here. So when I moved to places such as Cleveland, Ohio, a lot of it, you just knew. You knew that the Browns under Paul Brown were great in the 50s. I ended up going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and just soaking up all that Browns history. You know, a lot of it, some of it I kind of knew about already. I knew about Jim Brown. I knew about Brian Sipe and Sam Rutigliano and how they played that game against the Raiders, Red Right 88, and how Sipe threw a pick to Rod Martin, and it ended up, hurting the team, which was going to be, what they thought was a Super Bowl team, and the Raiders ended up going in. So you knew how much heartbreak was a part of Cleveland sports. I remember sitting in my mom's room in 1989 when Michael Jordan hit that shot against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I knew about their history and that they were the team of the 90s. So when I got there in 1994, I had an understanding of it. I knew that Bill Belichick wasn't liked at the time because he cut Bernie Kosar. And so I was able to really, get into it. And then I had to learn the history of the Cleveland Indians because they said the strike shortened season in 94. They were a really good team. And in 95, they came back with a 144-game schedule after the replacement players, and they ended up going to the World Series in 95 and losing to the Braves in 6 games. So I was there for that. So I got to understand the fabric of the society. Also, while I was in Cleveland, they ended up moving the team. So everywhere I went, it was just really a matter of just learning the culture, reading about it, and then, Jared, going to the games and talking to the people who have been there. I mean, people everywhere you go, there's always what you call the storytellers. There's always a storyteller around. When there's a storyteller around, you just go up and you talk to him. Don Newcomb, when I worked in L.A. All right, in the Dodger games. Hey, Big Nuke, talk to me about this. Give me some ideas about what was it like here and there. And that's how you learn the area. But you'd be surprised, Jared, how many people don't want to invest in reading and learning about the areas that they're in.
And that was, I think, and I imagine as you just kind of conveyed, much the same for you. I think that was what was most rewarding is learning a new culture. Even it's crazy to think that in the same country, but like the culture, both from a sports and non-sports standpoint, and understanding what it meant to be a tortured Lions fan, and the pride that people had in the Red Wings, and what Ernie Harwell truly meant to Tigers fan, like that stuff. Like I was happy to go from there back to Dallas because this is where I'm from and this is where I've always wanted to be. But I did really enjoy that, and I'm jealous almost of people like yourself who got to experience that so many times, a part of your journey, and probably have this understanding and this, if not worldview, country view that I certainly don't have, but one day would like to achieve. I just it's cool hearing you talk about your passion and all that went into that. And, I think that as challenging as it was so rewarding at the end of the day, especially from the sports talk standpoint, whereas, and we'll get into your career doing sports talk, not just being on TV. You deal with a lot of fire, a lot of venom, a lot of people who are looking for reasons to tell you you're an idiot. And when you can win the respect of those people, that's the ones who are worth it. It's pretty neat. But I'm curious. I don't know how much on the sports side this goes on. I always hear stories on the news side, and maybe some of them are over dramatized for entertainment purposes. But have you ever found yourself kind of in the middle of doing something that you believed was right with a story, versus what maybe your bosses or the executives at the network thought was right?
Sure. I mean, it happens all the time where you think something is not a story and they want you to make it a story about. I'll give you an example. It was back when that person on Twitter said Amari Cooper had been shot in Dallas. And of course, we find out it's not from some verified account. It's not even from someone who covers the Cowboys. Just somebody put it out on Twitter. And somebody at the station made a phone call to the Dallas Police Department, and DPD puts out a tweet saying, we have no information about Amari Cooper, being shot. Then Cooper puts out something later on social media like, I'm fine. And then Des Bryant puts out a tweet saying, this is wrong. And keep in mind, this is about 5 or 6 days after Kobe Bryant had ended up passing away. And I had somebody tell me that Rick Fox had died. in that helicopter crash. And, that hurt me because I covered Rick with the Lakers. I thought, oh my gosh, not Rick. And then come to find out it wasn't true. So there were some folks who wanted to put this story on the air, like, hey, we want you to go on the show and do it. I didn't want to do it. I was like, I don't want to do this. I think we're getting too much into covering or talking about things that are not true. If it's not a true story, why do we need to do it? Anyway, you get to a point in time where you ask yourself, is this battle worth fighting? I gave my opinion. They gave their opinion. I went out there and I did it. And I did it as quick as I could and just got done. So, they felt differently than I did. And that happens a lot. I mean, it just happens a lot whenever you have a certain news judgment you think and somebody else thinks it's not. Also, when you deal with news and you deal with sports, sometimes the news people think some things are bigger than you do in sports because you're in it. So these are decisions all the time that happen, and you got to I tell people, you got to decide what are the hills worth dying on. That wasn't a hill worth dying on. I just did not think it was a non-story. I also called the Cowboys and said, hey, you guys going to have a statement on it? They're like, no, it's fake news story. We're not going to comment on a fake news story.
And then, speaking of commenting, you had, a transition in which you, while still maintaining your job at NBC5, hosting a show for NBC Sports Radio. And, there's some similarities, I'm sure, with your job with NBC5 and certainly some differences. What led you to take on that added responsibility, and what were some of the challenges that you faced in doing so that you were able to overcome over time and with, I guess, a focus on improving in that regard?
I've tried to do radio just about every market I was in after my first job. So when I went to Austin, Texas, did it there, did radio in Cleveland, worked out and doing it in L.A., had my own show out there. Actually, I was co-hosting. I was filling in on Jim Rome's show when he go on vacation, so I ended up getting my own show out of that. And then when I came here, started ESPN Radio. Chuck Cooperstein and I did a show here in Dallas. We started 103.3, helped start the Fan, and then NBC Sports Radio ended up coming up. And I've always enjoyed it. It's been fun. There are definite differences to doing both. The one thing I'll tell you is that when you're doing the radio, and especially depending on the time, it can take you out of being in the clubhouses and locker rooms because you're not there as much because you're obviously spreading yourself thin. So that ability to make more contacts and having more contacts with the guys gets stretched when you're trying to do two jobs.
Newy, do you think, and I'm thinking of Rick Carlisle when I ask this question, there are people who are with a certain team every day, and so they get to know a ton of people and they're around, and some people view just being there as a license for information, essentially. In your role, you don't get to focus on just one team. What are the challenges with that, and maybe what are the advantages you have in that you're so widespread throughout the sports community here as opposed to being focused like a beat writer might be on one specific team?
Great question. I learned this from Mark Curtis when I interned for him at KTVI in St. Louis in 1992. Mark told me, he says, it was a Sunday. He's like, I'm going to go down today to the clubhouse. He says, I need to show my face. I hadn't been there all week. So Mark was one of the first guys who started showing me that, hey, there's certain times where you just need to go show your face. And I'll give you a good example. Like 3 years ago, I was at the ballpark, and I had not spent a whole lot of time out there at all. The Rangers were losing, and it was hot summer. I was like, man, I was just avoiding it. So I go out to the ballpark, and the Orioles are in town with Buck Showalter. And so I'm walking down there, and Steve Buechele, Boo says, Newy, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh boy, here it comes. Because believe me, when you don't show up and they see you, they got questions. You're gonna get some grief, which also shows that they like you. So I was like, I'm here to see something. No, really, what are you doing? And first thing I think is there some kind of scandal I know anything about? You're here, and I said, no, actually, I'm here. I'm here to see Showalter. And Boo just he laid into me without laying into me that, hey, you need to be around here more. And it was kind of reinforcing that lesson that Mark had taught me. Just, sometimes you just need to show up, and you don't always need a camera in my business. Just show up and show your face and let people see you. And it's something I've tried to do. I've tried to keep doing it. It gets tougher when you got 3 kids and a wife, and you're trying to do different things. But there's times where I know I just need to get down to the arena or get down to the stadium and just show my face. And whatever grief that I need to give it. Rick Carlisle's definitely. I always tell people they take roll, whether you believe it or not. They're taking roll. Who's scared? Who's not? And also, whether or not they feel like you have the right to question them on certain things. You're not around and you want to start, jumping in on guys about decisions that are made. They're gonna have an issue with you if you're not around and you just pop in and just drop in here and there. So I've also noticed there's delicacy in how you come at guys or talk to guys. You're not a regular on the beat. You're there at the Rangers all the time. Emily Jones is there. Evan Grant is there. Jeff Wilson's there. When you all are there and you're asking questions to a Joey Gallo, he's going to look at you differently and you'll be perceived differently versus me who's not there all the time. If you have not invested anything with those guys that they feel like you're justified to ask them, what may be a tougher question or something that's a little bit more direct.
There you go, episode 54, the Just a Sec Conversation. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to Newy for chatting with me. Certainly enjoyed that, and hopefully you did as well. Again, a reminder, would really appreciate if you would subscribe, like, comment, or just share the link with anyone who you think might be interested in this conversation or any of our past conversations, and definitely be on the lookout for more coming here in the very near future. Try to release 2 a week, so you check back each week, chances are 2 more will be made available. Until next time, stay safe, be healthy. Talk to you later.